My father humiliated me in front of 200 people at his retirement party. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I said 5 words into the mic and walked out. He found out why on Monday morning. 200 people laughed at me on a Saturday night in September. Not a nervous titter, not the polite chuckle you give when someone tells a joke that doesn't quite land. I mean the full, open-mouthed, shoulders-shaking laugh of a crowd that's been drinking since 7 and thinks the man at the microphone is absolutely killing it. My father stood on a stage draped in navy and gold, the colors of his company, Ivan's Logistics, in a tuxedo that cost more than my first month's rent in Boston. A spotlight was on him. A wireless mic was in his hand. He had just thanked his wife, praised his stepson, and received a standing ovation from 200 of his closest friends, colleagues, and industry peers. And then he turned the spotlight to table 27. And of course, he said, smiling wide, the way politicians smile when they know cameras are rolling, "This is my daughter, Heather." The room looked at me. I looked back. No degree, no future. He paused for the laugh. It came right on schedule. Just freeloads off the family. Maybe someday she'll find herself a rich husband. The laughter was the loudest sound in the room. I sat very still. My champagne glass, Dom Perignon, the good stuff, poured by a server in white gloves, was cold against my fingers. My spine was straight. My face was neutral in the way that faces become neutral after years of practice. I was not embarrassed. I was not hurt. I was watching a man burn down a bridge he didn't know I owned. I stood up slowly, raised my glass. Let every microphone in the room catch what came next. "Cheers," I said. "This is the last time any of you will see me." Then I walked out, heels clicking against hardwood, spine straight. The laughter died mid-breath, like someone had pulled a plug. 200 people went silent all at once, and the only sound left was the rhythm of my heels crossing that ballroom floor. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Let me tell you something about my father before I tell you what happened next. Richard Ivans built Ivans Logistics from a 2-truck operation in suburban Connecticut into a mid-size freight company doing somewhere north of $60 million in annual revenue by the time he retired. He was good at what he did. I will not take that from him. He had grit and instinct and the particular kind of confidence that men in his generation called leadership and everyone else called refusing to be wrong. He also had a first wife, my mother, who died of ovarian cancer when I was 9. After that, it was just him and me for 4 years. And those were good years, honestly. He coached my soccer team. He learned to braid hair from a YouTube video. He came to every school play, every science fair, every awkward middle school concert where I played a single triangle note and tried to look serious about it. And then he met Linda. Linda Marsh was 3 years younger than my father. Blonde, efficient, and the kind of woman who rearranged your kitchen the first time she visited and called it helping. She had a son from her first marriage, Marcus, 4 years older than me, already in college when they married, already consuming oxygen in a way that left less of it for everyone else. I was 13 when they got married. By the time I was 17, I understood a few things clearly. I was not in the family picture Linda was building. Marcus was. And my father, the man who once learned to braid hair for me, had let someone redecorate that picture without asking if I was still in it. He wasn't cruel. I want to be clear. He wasn't the kind of father who screamed or hit or disappeared. He was worse than that, in some ways. He was the kind of father who was simply less every year, less present, less interested, less convinced, it seemed, that I was worth the same investment he was making in Linda's son. By my senior year of high school, I had stopped noticing the gaps because the gaps had become the whole floor. And then came the money. My mother had a life insurance policy, not enormous, $120,000. She had left it for me specifically in a trust designed to release at 18 for college. My father was the executor. I know this because I found the original policy documents in a shoebox in our attic when I was 16, doing a school project about my family history and looking for old photographs. I photographed every page on my phone, filed them in a folder I labeled History Project. Then I put the shoebox back exactly where I found it and said nothing. I waited. At 17, I got into Northeastern University. Full academic program, not a scholarship. I would need tuition. My father sat me down the spring of my senior year, Linda beside him on the couch, and explained in the gentle but firm voice he used for difficult conversations that college finances were complicated this year, that Marcus had been accepted to a prestigious MBA program, that the family had to make some hard choices. A girl doesn't need a degree to have a good life, Linda said. She actually said that in 2011. You'll find a nice husband someday. My father nodded. I looked at my hands. What happened to Mom's trust? I asked. Silence. The life insurance policy, the one she left for college. More silence. And in that silence, in the way my father's jaw tightened and Linda studied the middle distance, I got my answer. That money was needed for the business, my father said finally. You'll understand when you're older. I was 17. I understood just fine. I moved to Boston that August with $2,000 I had saved from 3 years of babysitting and waitressing, a single suitcase, and the photographs I had taken of my mother's insurance documents, still sitting in a folder on my phone labeled History Project. I never moved back. I want to skip the part where I tell you it was easy. It wasn't. The first year in Boston was a particular kind of hard that I don't have words for, which is funny because I now employ people whose entire job is to find words for hard things. I shared a 3-room apartment with 2 other girls from Craigslist. I worked admin at a small freight brokerage in South Boston, $9 an hour, plus the occasional $10 tip when I ran coffee orders. I ate a lot of rice. I learned that pride is a luxury and that asking for help is a skill. But I also learned other things. I learned supply chain management from free MIT OpenCourseWare lectures, which I watched on a laptop with a cracked screen at midnight after my roommates went to sleep. I learned freight economics from trade publications I read on my lunch break. I learned negotiation from a podcast hosted by a Harvard Business School professor who had a voice like a foghorn, but a mind like a scalpel. I took every free certification I could find: logistics, project management, operations analysis. By 22, I was managing accounts. By 24, I was running a small client portfolio. By 26, I had enough relationships, knowledge, and reputation in the Boston freight corridor that I could see, very clearly, the company I was about to build. I incorporated Meridian Consulting in April of my 26th year. Just me, a contract lawyer named Diana Reyes who charged me flat fees and never once doubted I'd make it, and a second-hand desk I carried up 3 flights of stairs myself. The premise was simple. Mid-size freight and logistics companies were leaving enormous operational efficiency on the table because they didn't have the infrastructure to analyze their own supply chains. I could do that analysis. I could redesign those operations. I could save them money they didn't know they were bleeding. It worked. Slowly, then all at once. The way most things that matter tend to work. By 30, Meridian Consulting had 15 employees, an office in the Fort Point neighborhood of Boston with real windows and real furniture, and $4 million in annual revenue. I had built it myself. And 3 years before the night my father stood on a stage and called me worthless, Ivan's Logistics signed a 5-year contract with us. I need to explain why my name wasn't on anything. When I started Meridian, I made a deliberate decision to keep my personal profile low. Partly this was strategic. In a relationship-driven industry, the firm's reputation mattered more than any individual's. Partly it was protective. I had learned by then that visibility invites interference, and I wanted to build something that could stand on its own before anyone tried to have opinions about it. My CFO, Jonathan Brace, 14 years in corporate finance, the kind of quiet, methodical mind that makes things permanent, handled all external communications on contracts. My name appeared in the incorporation documents, in our internal systems, and exactly nowhere public-facing. The Meridian website listed our services, our results, our team. My name was not on it. When Ivan's Logistics first came to us 3 years ago, they came through a referral from one of our existing clients in the Connecticut freight corridor. Jonathan handled the pitch. Jonathan signed the contract. My father had absolutely no idea the company he was calling the backbone of his operations was owned and operated by his daughter, and I let it stay that way. Not because I was afraid of him, not because I needed his approval or his recognition, but because I understood something he never would. The most powerful position is the one the other person doesn't know you're in. I sat at table 27 that September Saturday, behind a pillar near the service entrance, and I watched my father tell a shipping executive across the room that Meridian Consulting had been transformative for Ivan's. Change the way we think about freight, he said. Whoever's running that firm is a genius. I've been trying to get a meeting with them for months, the executive said. My father shrugged. Never met them personally. Don't care who they are as long as they keep delivering. I hid my smile behind a glass of Dom Perignon. Marcus found me on the terrace at 8:47 p.m. I remember the time because I had just checked my phone. A text from Jonathan asking how the evening was going. Marcus was in his 3rd cocktail and wearing the particular expression of men who confuse success with permission. I heard you started some little company up there, he said, playing businesswoman. He laughed at his own phrasing. How long before it fails? 6 months? I looked at him for a long moment. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. You're going to wish you'd treated me differently, I said. He laughed harder and walked away. 40 minutes later, my father took the stage. He thanked his wife. He announced Marcus as the new CEO of Ivan's Logistics to a standing ovation. He told a story about the early days that painted him as a visionary, and then the spotlight swung to table 27, and there I was. No degree, no future, just freeloading off the family. 200 people laughed. I raised my glass. Cheers, I said. This is the last time any of you will see me. The heels, the hardwood, the silence. The September night was cool and clear, and I stood on the sidewalk outside the hotel for exactly 45 seconds, breathing it in. Then I got in the car I had called before the party, because I had known this was how it would go. I had been planning for 6 months. The 2 documents left my office by courier at 8:03 a.m. Monday morning. The first was the official termination notice. Meridian Consulting was exercising its right to terminate the service agreement with Ivan's Logistics, effective 30 days from the date of the letter. Strategic repositioning was cited as the reason. The letter was formal, professional, and on Meridian letterhead. Jonathan had reviewed it Friday afternoon. Our legal counsel, Rachel Park, a contracts attorney with 11 years in commercial litigation, had approved the language Saturday morning before the party. The second was a personal letter, addressed to Richard Ivans, marked private and confidential, hand-delivered by a separate courier directly to his home address. I wrote it myself. I revised it 7 times over 6 months. By the final version, it was 4 paragraphs. No profanity, no emotion on the surface, just facts. In the same organized way I had learned to communicate everything that mattered. The company you called the backbone of Ivan's Logistics, Meridian Consulting, is mine. I built it. I own it. I have owned it since its incorporation. For 3 years, without your knowledge, the daughter you told 200 people had no future has been a cornerstone of your business operations. 40% of your operational efficiency runs through systems and processes I designed. I hope Saturday night was worth it. Don't contact me again. I included a photocopy of Meridian's incorporation papers. My name at the top. Sole owner, clear as anything. I was at my desk by 9. I had a cup of coffee and a new operations proposal for a client in Chicago to finish reviewing. By 10:04 a.m., I had 12 missed calls, all from numbers in the 203 area code. By 2:17 p.m., Jonathan knocked on my office door. There are 3 people in the lobby, he said. In the careful way Jonathan said things that were actually astonishing. Richard Ivans, Linda Ivans, and Marcus Reyes Evans. He paused. They've been there for 20 minutes. Conference room B, I said. The glass-walled one. Put them in there. Jonathan nodded. Wait 8 minutes before you tell them I'm available. He nodded again without expression, because Jonathan was professionally excellent. I spent those 8 minutes finishing the Chicago proposal. Then I straightened my jacket, walked down the hall, and opened the conference room door. My father looked older than I had ever seen him, even older than he'd looked the night before, in the spotlight, confident and performing. In the glass-walled conference room under fluorescent light, he looked his age for the first time. He was 71. Linda sat to his left, her hands folded, her face arranged in the careful neutral she used when she was calculating. Marcus sat at the end of the table, arms crossed, jaw set, radiating the particular energy of men who are trying to decide if they're still in charge of the situation. I sat down. I did not offer water. I did not apologize for keeping them waiting. I waited. My father spoke first. He was, to his credit, direct about it. "I'll apologize," he said. "Is that what this is about? I'm sorry, Heather. Okay, now can we talk about the contract?" I looked at him for a long time. "You're sorry because you need something from me," I said. "That's not an apology. That's a transaction." Marcus's hand slammed flat against the table. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. "Do you understand what happens if you walk on this contract? 20% of our workforce. Do you understand that? Real people lose jobs because you want your feelings validated." I turned to look at him. I kept my voice even. "It is a business decision. The same kind of business decision you made when you spent my mother's education fund on your MBA." Something left Marcus's face. Not a specific expression. More like the general assumption that he was untouchable. "That's right," I said. "I know about the policy. I've known since I was 16. I have photographs of every page. My attorney, Rachel Park, has a full certified copy in her files." I paused. Rachel Park, by the way, has 11 years in commercial litigation and a particular interest in fiduciary duty violations. She found the original trust documentation very interesting. The color had left my father's face entirely. "I'm not pursuing it," I said. "That was never what this was about. I didn't build Meridian for revenge. I built Meridian because I had something to prove, and the best proof was the work itself." I stood up. "But you should know that I know, and you should know that I've known for 14 years, and you've been paying me indirectly for the last 3 of them." I walked to the door, put my hand on the handle. Linda spoke for the first time. "Heather," her voice was measured, precise. "Think about what you're doing. Your father's company is not my concern," I said. "It hasn't been since I was 17. My father stood slowly. He crossed the room and stopped in front of me. He was close enough that I could see the broken capillaries on his nose, the gray at his temples, the way his hands hung at his sides with nothing in them. "You really don't need anything from us," he said. It wasn't quite a question. I looked at him. My father. The man who once learned to braid hair from a YouTube video because his 9-year-old daughter had no mother to do it for her. The man who had been, for 4 years, enough. "Dad," I said, "I haven't needed anything from you in 12 years. His eyes went somewhere complicated. "Tonight you're just finally finding out." I opened the door. I walked back down the hall. "What happened next is a matter of business record and public knowledge, so I'm not telling you anything proprietary." Ivan's Logistics began the transition away from Meridian Consulting Services 30 days after the termination notice. The operational disruption was significant but not fatal. My team handled the transition professionally, with full documentation and thorough handoff, because that is how I run things. Whatever I thought of Richard Ivans, I was not going to damage my firm's reputation by doing a messy exit. The operational efficiency losses at Ivans Logistics in the following quarter were documented in industry coverage. Not by me, not by anyone connected to me. Freight industry analyst Graham Hollister, who covers mid-market logistics companies for Supply Chain Digest, wrote a piece in December noting that Ivans had experienced a 23-point drop in operational performance metrics after a change in strategic consulting partnerships. He didn't name Meridian. He didn't know to. Marcus Evans-Reyes lasted 14 months as CEO of Ivans Logistics before the board, which had watched those metrics and a subsequent bad acquisition, voted to bring in an interim executive. I heard this from a mutual contact in the Connecticut freight community. I did not feel satisfaction about it. I felt nothing, which is its own kind of thing. There is a piece of this I haven't told you. I've been building toward it because it's the part that matters most, and the part that's hardest to explain without the rest of it in place. 6 weeks after the conference room meeting, I received a letter. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten, on plain white stationery, in my father's careful, old-fashioned print that I recognized from birthday cards I had received until I was 9, and then again, briefly, when I was 17, and he was explaining that my future was being rerouted without my consent. "Heather, I don't expect you to answer this. I'm not asking for anything. I want to say what I should have said in your conference room, but I was ashamed, and being ashamed made me stupid and quiet. Your mother would be so angry at me. She used to say you were the sharp one. She was right. I don't have an explanation that holds up. I have a record of choices that I can't take back. You have a binder's worth of evidence, I imagine, of exactly what those choices cost. I'm proud of what you built. I know that doesn't help. I know it might even make you angrier, and you'd be right to be angry. You can throw this away. I'll understand. Dad, I read it twice. I put it in a drawer. I didn't throw it away. I'm not going to tell you we reconciled. I'm not going to give you the version of this story where I forgive him in a coffee shop and we cry and the wound heals clean. That's not what happened. And even if it had been, I don't think I'd share it. Some things are for keeping. What I will tell you is this. Meridian Consulting turned 6 years old in April. We have 22 employees now. Annual revenue crossed $8 million last fiscal year. We signed a new 5-year contract in October, not with Ivans Logistics, with a regional freight group in the Midwest that found us through an industry referral. My operations director, a woman named Carmen Delgado, who has a logistics degree from University of Michigan and the organizational instincts of a general, likes to say that the best supply chains are invisible. You don't notice them when they're working. You only notice when they're gone. I think about that a lot. The best things I've built, nobody saw coming. Not my father, not Marcus, not Linda in her beige cardigan with her bullet point list of what a girl needed to have a good life. Nobody saw it coming except me. And maybe my mother, who left a life insurance policy and a belief that I was the sharp one, and whose trust fund went somewhere it was never supposed to go. I have copies of every page. Rachel Park still has the full certified set in her files. I've never used them. I don't need to. People ask me sometimes, people who know the story or pieces of it, what it felt like to walk out of that ballroom, whether it was satisfying, whether I was scared, whether I cried in the car. Here's the truth. I didn't cry. I'm not going to pretend I'm so far above it that it didn't land anywhere in my body. 200 people laughing is 200 people laughing, and your nervous system doesn't care how prepared you are. My hands were cold when I got in the car. I sat in the back seat for most of the drive with my fingers pressed flat against my thighs, and I looked out the window at the highway lights going past, and I thought about my mother. I thought about a 9-year-old girl with no one to braid her hair, and I thought about what she had done with that. The river I'd crossed to get there, the midnight MIT lectures, the rice and the Craigslist apartment, the hours and the sweat, and the deliberate invisible positioning. It hadn't been revenge. Not exactly. Revenge is about the other person. It lives in them, feeds on them, needs them to suffer in order to be satisfied. What I had built didn't need my father at all. That was the point. That had always been the point. I had built something real, something documented and measured and externally verified, something that stood on its own regardless of what Richard Ivins thought about it. And then for 3 years, without knowing it, he had paid me for it. He had praised it publicly. He had called it transformative and called its maker a genius. He had done that without knowing. And when I walked out of that ballroom and the room went silent, it wasn't because I had performed some dramatic moment of revenge. It was because 200 people had just watched a woman who had been dismissed her entire life refuse, one final, quiet, irreversible time, to stay in the room where she wasn't valued. The silence wasn't about me. It was about them suddenly understanding what they'd laughed at. The last thing I'll tell you is small. It almost didn't make the story. The week after the conference room meeting, I went back to Boston, back to my apartment in Fort Point, and I took down an old photograph I'd had on my bookshelf for years. My father and me at a soccer game when I was 8. He was kneeling beside me on the field, both of us in rain gear, laughing at something off camera. I'm missing a front tooth in the picture. He looks young and present and genuinely happy in the way people look when they don't know what's coming. I put the picture in a box, not in the trash, in a box. There is a difference. I am 32 years old. I run a company I built from nothing with $2,000 and a cracked laptop and a certainty that no one else had on my behalf. I have 15 full-time employees who go home to their families every night because the work we do is good and stable and properly compensated. I have a reputation in my industry built on results, not relationships, not names, not legacy. I have not attended another family event. I do not expect to. But I kept the photograph, and I kept the letter in the same drawer, not because I've forgiven everything or decided that love erases a record. It doesn't. I have too much documentation to believe that. But because I have learned in 32 years that the things that shaped you don't stop being real just because you've outgrown the damage they did. My mother thought I was the sharp one. She was right. And the sharp ones, the ones who get cut and learn to cut cleanly, don't need to bleed on the ballroom floor to prove it. They just walk out, heels clicking, spine straight, and the room goes quiet behind them.